Welcome everyone to episode 63 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan, coming to you from the great state of Sacramento, California, home of De'Aaron Fox and the City of Trees. I will not acknowledge us as the farm to fork capital because it's not us. We are a 1 to 3 man podcast, depending on what day of the week you catch us. This week I'm going to be conducting an interview by myself. You can check out the show at gullyblanchard.com. You can rate, subscribe, review the show on iTunes. Gully Blanchard. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard. GULLYBLANCHARD. We've got 63 episodes counting this one on the show. I know I did a 2-part episode with my man Jameson from Vegas. But yeah, we've got about 63 episodes up on a pretty weekly basis where we talk about anything from politics, sports. We make light of social issues. We talk social. We'll have fun with some social stuff. We'll kind of go wherever the show takes us. With one of the gentlemen from the South Congress podcast. He's a great Twitter follow, someone that I've gotten along with real well through there. Without further ado, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, man. So I know you guys do the South Congress podcast. Give people a brief idea, kind of where they can find it, what it's about, where they can check it out.
Okay, so yeah, if you're on iTunes, you just search South Congress with a K, SoundCloud South Congress with a K as well. Really, the South Congress podcast is an extension of the South Congress blog that I started. It must have been like 7-8 years ago. When I was in college, I'm trying to get it all out there. My degree's in English, always been a writer, did some journalism stuff, and I graduated at a time where the way media was presented was changing. Less people were working for papers, more people were blogging and things like that. And so I kind of wanted to have a space where I could express how I feel without really being held to have a certain standard, without having deadlines, being able to have your own format, your own length. So started the South Congress podcast, or South Congress blog, I should say. We'll talk about everything. We'll talk about sports, we'll talk about TV, we'll talk about politics and social issues. And what happened was I had been doing that for a while. And I'm sure it's something that we'll talk about. Probably the reason that we follow each other now is pro wrestling. I graduated college around 2008. Had kind of a bad breakup, and a lot of my buddies had moved away after college, and I was kind of looking for that thing to latch on to outside of the career. So I ended up subscribing, getting a membership to the Pro Wrestling Torch, and I get my wrestling news there every week. It's like early on before everybody was listening to the podcast. And the one I kind of latched on to was the East Coast cast. It was a couple of guys from Philly, Travis Bryant, Vardre Purnell, who talked about wrestling like I talked about it with my friends. And, was a listener to that for a long time. And eventually some things changed with their lineup, and Travis asked me to become part of it every week. So we do that, and the next thing I know, I kind of get the confidence to go ahead with my own podcast. And just like the blog, we talk sports, we talk social issues, we talk dating, we talk comics, we talk TV. So I think because, and it might be something we talk about later, when the whole situation with Mike Brown went down in, in St. Louis area, I kind of lost my passion to write. I didn't really, physically, I couldn't put my hands still to type things out. It was too emotional. So that's kind of when we really started making the transition to doing podcasting. And, here we are, a couple of years later, being pretty okay. The show has a good following, a lot of downloads, a lot of listens, we're making merch. So, I think, I hate that it had to be a tragedy that has really brought us to the transition over to the podcast. But, it's been a blessing so far, man. We, again, talk about a little bit of everything. I make it a point to, be diverse. You know, Travis and I will do the Flash every week. I'll get on with my brother and we'll talk current events and music. I make it a point to get women on every couple of episodes, and we talk about, you know, dating and things like that. So it's kind of a melting pot of all the different things you go through as a 30-something-year-old growing up in this world. So I know I'm going on, and let me stop. But yeah, that's I needed to get this out for so long to just say this to somebody. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And that's, you know, to me, that's kind of what these things have become. Like when we first started ours, you know, almost 2 years ago, it was kind of something where we didn't really know how to record it. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we kind of set it up to where, you know, we're going to kind of get on here, and if nothing else, it's going to end up being an outlet for us, and we get to have fun with it. You know, you get to come across a lot of different people from different walks of life that you learn from. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I had sort of a similar issue when I was writing for No Coast Bias, to where, like, I love professional wrestling. I know we're going to get into this a little bit later on in the show, but for the life of me, I just didn't have that thing that was missing, you know, to keep writing and keep doing, you know, the proofreading. And then, you know, you write, that's a really lonely sort of existence. And you end up being, you know, for me, at least, I know I was overcritical of everything that I wrote, and I would try to overwrite something or underwrite something. And, you know, with this being, you know, this sort of podcast environment that I have, it's kind of fun just to have conversations with people from different backgrounds, from different walks of life. Kind of the same thing, like you have, you know, you rotate between having, you know, male and you know, men and women as co-hosts and stuff like that, just to get different perspectives about things. But that's kind of been a similar path for me, to where, you know, this kind of started as an idea that, you know, that I had with a friend of mine. He was lucky enough to kind of put it together. And then, you know, we're here 63 episodes later. We've met some cool people out of it. You know, we've got a pretty good following. And it's something that, you know, if nothing else, it's a good outlet to meet different people from different walks of life. And, you know, when I do the episodes with my friends once a week, we have our fun together too. So it's been a fun sort of release. It's something that we can point to and just say, you know, if nothing else, this was something that we had for ourselves and we enjoyed. And, you know, if people get to listen to it, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Like I never expected. You never expect to have a following. You never expect to have an interaction, because it's a lot like my favorite album is Reasonable Doubt.
Yes.
It's amazing. And, you know, and the thing that always stuck with me with that was Jay-Z was like, I wasn't making this for critical acclaim. I wasn't making this to go platinum. Like, I made this to impress my friends. And that's always kind of what this was. Like, I wanted my peers to know how I felt about things, to be able to, because I don't like talking on the phone. Like, I love podcasts, I don't like talking on the phone. So sometimes it would be difficult for me to really sit down and have entire conversations about stuff, because the way my time was spent. You know, I was, like, I'm going to start, like, I'm fresh out of college. I got the career to take care of. I got a dog I'm all of a sudden taking care of by myself. So, like, I wasn't super available. So, you know, this really became an outlet to have my feelings out there. Because one thing about me, I hate repeating myself. I think it's the worst thing, because I feel like the first time I say it, I get it out right. And then every time I say it after that, I feel like it loses a bit of what I'm saying. Like, every time I feel like I'm losing a bit of the point I was trying to get across. So I'm like, if I just put this out there once and everybody can hear it, like, it's perfect. I don't have to address it again. So yeah, I love it. My schedule was so crazy. I wish I could sit down and be firm and say, okay, Hawkins Brothers show is happening this day. Give Them Hell is happening this day. South Commerce Mainstream is happening this day. But I was 10 years younger, so I had 10 years younger responsibilities, because, you know, being an adult, trying to figure stuff out, making sure the schedule goes right is so difficult. It's so hard. But yeah, I love to do it. I really do.
Yeah, no, that's been something that's for us, like with my friends. I think, you know, I don't know if this happens for everyone as you get older. I know it's happened for us, to where the older we get, the harder it is to kind of pin down a certain time frame. So this has been something that, you know, on a week-to-week basis, now that we started it back up, like Wednesday nights are sort of our nights to kind of hang out and have fun together and, you know, catch up with friends we've known for half our lives. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right about sometimes, you know, just adult stuff and life stuff gets in the way, and it becomes really difficult to kind of put that time together. But to have something out once a week, same thing. Like, I never really expected anything to come out of this other than, you know, my friends and I were going to have some fun, and, you know, we're here now. you meet people from different walks of life, different backgrounds that you get to bounce stuff off of that you might have never thought was possible at episode 1. But to have that makes it a lot more fun as you consistently build these episodes one after the other. And it's tough because, I remember when I first started, it was something where we didn't really know what we were doing, and it came across really well because I never wanted to have that podcast that whatever you heard on the news is going to be the same thing you hear there, because you can hear, there's only so many different ways you can hear, Jinder Mahal is a WWE champion. But what we wanted to do originally was kind of make fun of it and kind of have some fun with it. But as you get more comfortable, it's something, excellence is something, I was one of those Greek philosophers said excellence is something you consistently do. And by no means do I think that we're excellent at this, but I do know that we're having fun. And every time we turn the mic off, we laugh about what we did. And if nothing else comes out of it, the experiences, the networking and things like that, those are some of the highlights of it for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I know we were a little bit delayed on this because your beloved Texas Longhorns played in the River Rivalry. It is funny about OU, man. Every time I hear OU theme music, I think of Jim Ross. Every time, it never fails.
That's the one guy who made it pro.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, he's Jim Ross is great. Long story short about that game, because it's funny. I gave my brother do a Washington football podcast, and we have yet to talk about the Chiefs game, partly because of schedule, partly because I don't know how to talk about the loss, but I guess I have to do it here. What it was 29-24. Oklahoma came out, 17-0 from the jump. We rallied back. A few things. We didn't tackle like we've been tackling the last couple of weeks. And one thing that I've acknowledged is, one thing that's benefited us since the Maryland game, we have not really faced a dual threat quarterback. So we can sit down on the run, and our DBs match up pretty well with everybody else's receivers. This was the time where, we're really dealing with a guy who can escape the blitz. And, Baker Mayfield, even though, and I have to be careful with this because I don't like him, but what I mean by that is, like, Baker Mayfield's like 21. He's like, 10 years my junior. Like, I can't really say I don't like him. He's a kid, but he carries himself like a, sub 6 foot quarterback who wasn't recruited should. So I respect that. But damn it, he gets away from us so much. He really escaped the blitz a lot. We had some blown coverages. We had a freshman quarterback, who made some mistakes in the fourth. But I'm proud of my team. Like they came back. But we really have to them early on. We're playing 5 second string linemen, so our run game is almost non-existent. Like everybody's hurt who was starting on the line at the beginning of the season. So there was things, but I'm never going to really give Oklahoma credit. Like that won't happen. So we just need to play better. But it was a fantastic game. Short story about the game. So we follow each other on Twitter. So you kind of get a feel for how I am. I'm not really like I'm prone to get into a bit of an argument with a troll. Like it's just I'm kind of built like that. And, my other half, she's always like, why do you encourage that? I'm like, because I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me emotionally. I'm here for the conversation. So, happened in the Carolina-Philly game. I know, how happy you are about the Philly game. But the thing happened where the old guy shouts something at a guy in the crowd. And ends up punching him, right? So, from what I understand, and I've heard reports on it, but it sounds like the older guy called the younger guy a spit, and then he got punched. And the story going around was like it was a sucker punch. And my whole point was like, look, when you shout like a racial epithet at somebody, you should expect a punch.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's how people are built. Like whether you think it's right or wrong, like your morals don't really come into play, because if your morals dictate that you can say anything to anybody, you have to understand the next man's morals might dictate that you can't say anything to anybody, and he might punch you in the mouth.
Yep.
So basically, that this thing gets a lot of retweets and likes or whatever, and some guy jumps in the comments like, somebody, you're just a loser who's going to jail. And I was like, you know what? I'm not refuting what you're saying. I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is, and I'm not even saying that it's a good thing to punch somebody who says something bad about you. What I'm saying is, you need to be cognizant of other people's feelings. You know,
Absolutely.
like somebody might punch you in the face if you say something crazy to them. So me and this guy going back and forth, and it basically comes down to him saying like, "Didn't your mother raise you better? And I hope you never have kids." You know, and I'm like, this is what I told him. I was like, look, in my life, number one, like, I'm not built like that. I don't sucker punch nobody. If I'm punching you, it's because we've discussed what's about to happen. My second part of that was like, look, do you not want me to have kids because your kids might say something crazy to my kids, and then my kids might punch your kids in the face? Because if that's the case, that's a problem with your parents. Like, that's not me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I say this to say, we get to the bar where we're watching the game at. You know, there's two older couples sitting behind me, right? And this guy is just shouting every nonsensical thing at the TV. And I'm very sensitive to the plight of the college athlete. You know, I was at UT, you know, during the championship years. And when I was at UT, the school was 2% black. So you're friends with all the athletes because all you have is each other. You know what I mean? Like, the school, including the athletes, is 2% black. So we got to rally around each other. So, you know, I get what they go through. I get, you know, being, you know, one of the athletes on the planet and not being able to pay for your next meal. Like, I'm around guys like that. You know what I mean? So when you're saying, I hope this guy loses his scholarship, when a guy gets hurt and you're saying, what, did he hurt his vagina? Like, I'm taking that to heart. I don't live that life, but I'm around those kids. Like, I know what they're experiencing. So I'm fuming. Like, Gully Blanchard, I'm fuming at these guys, right?
Yep.
Then the game goes a bit further, and a guy from Oklahoma gets into an argument with me, and these guys have my back. And I'm so distraught because I don't know where to go now. Like, I'm like, oh, God, now these guys are being nice to me. So, yeah, the thing I went through on Twitter really informed the thing I went through today because, you never know which way that wind's going to blow. And it's funny. I ended up shaking hands with the guy from Oklahoma afterward because it turns out after that one little spat, he was a good sport, and he's still way better people than the other guys. So, yeah, here we are.
Yeah, like, man, the Eagles are really the only team I kind of get as emotional as I used to about those things. I've calmed down a lot over the years, but I've found, like, via social media, like, just sports fans in general, like, I get that, you know, it's something that it's the pros and cons of social media. For example, had social media not come up, this podcast never happens.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, due to social media, like, it's just insane, like, how people become, and it's tough because, you know, you see my avatar with the Kaepernick shirt in the background, and as soon as I wore that, like, I had people all jumping in there being like, oh, you're, you know, Whitey doesn't understand and this and that, and I'm just like, one part of me wants to rationally argue with them, and the other part of me just wants to screw with them, and I just, you know, you call them snowflakes, and, like, I took the exact thing that they get on people, the quote-unquote liberals, calling them snowflakes, and I just turned it around on them. I just said everything they said was fake news, and, you know, I was calling them all snowflakes and everything like that, and it's just so interesting to see, like, how different people can take one specific thing. Like, for example, you know, me and my better half are watching the Eagles game at the bar the other week, and, you know, I had my Kaepernick shirt on, and, you know, you had a guy across from us that everything that the Raiders did, like, he was a big-time Raider fan. Living in Northern California, we get that a lot. And, like, the Raiders could do no wrong, and I want to say they're playing the Broncos, and the Broncos could do nothing right. And, like, I think it was when Derek Carr fumbled, and he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you could literally see that thing was a fumble. Like, it was clear as day. And the guy was like, nope, not a fumble. Nope, not a fumble. And it's just
immediately.
like one thing I've learned over the years watching Philly play is, like, you know, if they're not a good team that week, they're not a good team. But, like, I just can't stand the whole narrative where like the refs are screwing us. They don't want us to win. Like it's such an exhausting thing to watch these games and think like every single solitary time your team loses, it's due to the refs. And like it's as I've gotten older, like I've enjoyed interacting with some sports fans, but like it's exhausting, especially being an Eagles fan. Like obviously, I'm the first to make the joke. Like, yeah, I know we haven't won a Super Bowl. Like that's going to consistently be funny to me, just because like I don't want to be pissed off about that forever. Like, yes, they've never won a Super Bowl. Yes, they've been to 4 straight NFC title games and a Super Bowl and lost. Like I've got my memories about them, but I just would rather enjoy watching my team play 16 games a year, or in the sake of, or with the Sacramento Kings, watching them play 82 games a year and just having fun with it. Like, I don't want to be that upset to where like I'm watching that Eagles Panthers game on Thursday, and every Cam Newton touchdown, I'm like, like just getting completely irrational. Like things are supposed to be fun, and yeah, obviously it's a lot funner when your team wins as opposed to when it loses. But I can't. I don't enjoy picking fights when it comes to that kind of stuff with strangers. Now, if you see me with the Kaepernick shirt on and you've got something you want to say about that, by all means, bring it and I'll bring it on with you. But like, I don't get the concept of like people, like strangers that you don't know at a bar or wherever you choose to watch the game, like making it a point to get into the game that you're watching. Like it blows my mind how people have that weird sense of like that's okay to do that with people that they don't know.
No, I'm spoiled, man. Like I was born in '85, so my earliest sports memories are Washington winning the Super Bowl in '92. And I'm from DC, so that's me like growing up, being around like my mother's and father's side of the family. Like, you're a kid, and this is like the highest celebration. You know what I mean? Like it's a great time. And then my parents are military, so I grew up in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. I moved to San Antonio in '98, so I'm that kid I wasn't a Bulls fan, but I'm a Michael Jordan fan, because everybody was a Michael Jordan fan back then. You know what I mean? I moved around, so I'm not clinging. So I moved to San Antonio. I was like, well, hell, I might as well be a Spurs fan. And then they win the title in '99. I graduated high school in '03, and I went to UT immediately. Like I graduated on a Saturday and moved up to Austin on a Monday. So my first summer session is when they win the '03 title, and then they win '05, and then they win '07. So they win, 3 times when I'm in college. Again in '05, Texas wins a national championship. So '05 is like the best sports year ever. And then, we have 2013, where 2013 is the hardest I've ever taken sports, because that's when, Miami comes back to win Game 6, and then they win Game 7. And the crazy thing for me was, like, I'm a Kanye West stan, right? So they lose Game 6 the day the Yeezus comes out. I'm literally listening to Bound 2 as Ray Allen hits that shot. So every time I hear that song, even though I love it, I process that shot every time I listen to it, right? So I'm literally, and this is going to sound crazy, because I'm the person who says be laid back with sports, and I'm laid back now, but I couldn't sleep for a year. Like I legit slept bad. Thank God they won the 14 title, because I've never taken sport like that. Because again, like I'm spoiled, like I'm used to so much success that when this happens, it's just like, oh God, my world is so broken. Like it has nothing to do with me, right? But I'm so broken up about it. So, and again, I live in Texas, so most of the people I'm around are Cowboys fans, and so I control people, because Washington, like you said, these things move in cycles. You can't get too up or too down. Like I've had my success, and so if they never win another game again, like I have that time, like I have that memory, and like I'm a Nationals fan now, and I stayed up, to watch that game Thursday night, and they still haven't advanced in the postseason, but here today, gone tomorrow. Like it's just life is so fulfilling. Like, you do your show. You do your show with your buddies. Like, you have a life outside of what other people are doing. So, other than that one time where I took it really bad, like, sport is fun. Like, I can't get too worked up. Like, when I see a Cowboys fan, I immediately give them a hard time. But in the same breath, I'm telling you the things I like about your team.
Mm-hmm.
see good football. So, like, I'm the biggest Sean Lee proponent there is because I understand when Sean Lee's healthy, they're a good team, and I don't want to see people get hurt. So, you know, the next extension is to be like, hey, you know, I like good football, so I hope he stays healthy. Like, it's not no sport is life or death because there's too much going on in life to focus on things like that.
Yeah, that was something that with Philly, like I've, you know, I remember like with the Deshaun Macklin and LaShawn era of Andy Reid football, and then you know my first memories of being an Eagles fan were Randall Cunningham living with my dad in San Francisco, thinking like this guy was the most incredible thing I ever saw because he, you know, he would run around where a lot of other quarterbacks were stationary and things of that nature. So I thought that was incredible. But then, you know, as you get older, you know, I kind of went away for a little bit and came back with the McNabb era. But to live through that era, to live through, you know, the ups, the downs, the receiver that wore 81 that shall remain nameless came in and broke the team's heart. You know, to go through all that and then to go through, you know, the new triplets with Deshaun, Macklin, and LaShawn. And then you had, you know, the habits reflect the mission era with Chip Kelly that I don't, you know, I'm still starting to kind of get over being able to talk about. But, you know, to have all that, to have what they have now, like, look, they're 5-1. I'm not sold on them yet. I want to still see them beat, you know, the top echelon teams, but it's fun. You know, it's fun when your team wins, but, you know, the high, you have to sort of balance out that low. Like when they, you know, when they lost the game against the Chiefs, it was very much like, all right, cool, they lost, you know, on with my day. Like you have to be able to kind of leave that there. And I've had those days where I didn't leave losses, you know, at the bar or at Buffalo Wild Wings or wherever I would watch them. But now, just to watch them, you know, watch them play on a Sunday, spend the rest of my day doing other stuff makes it a lot funner.
Exactly, yeah. I always know that whatever Washington does during the day, Curb Your Enthusiasm is coming on that night. So he gets
absolutely. Yeah. So I know you do a lot of stuff with the Photoshop. I know I've actually that the stuff you do is really incredible. Bless your heart for not having to sit through Starcade '92, but just making an image about it because those are some rough years. But how did you find pro wrestling? Did you find that when you were younger? Did you find it as a teenager, an adult?
So, it's actually it's funny. My parents got divorced when I was 2 or 3. But I was lucky enough to where my mother's military, but she's also from Maryland, and we were stationed there. So I got to spend a lot of time with my mother's family and my father's family, and they all went to high school together. So it was like everybody's always together. You know what I mean? Everybody's close. So with my dad, I just always remember watching WWF Superstars in the morning, and then WCW Saturday night. And my dad is I'm giving out like all my details here. You know, I'm a strong 5'9", so you can imagine. It's tiny, right? So my dad is like 6'3". My dad's like 6'3", 240, right? So I used to lay on my dad's back because my dad would always lay on the floor. We sit there and we watch WCW Saturday night. We watch Swamp Thing. Like those are the 2 things I remember seeing as a kid. And I was always super into wrestling. Like my earliest Razor Ramon, just beating jobbers left and right. And then I'm a huge Dean Malenko stan. I thought Dean Malenko was great. Him and William Regal. I just thought nobody could touch William Regal when we were kids. So that's what got me into it. Then on my mother's side, even though my mother was working full-time in the Air Force, she also worked part-time as an usher at the Capitol Center where the Bullets used to play.
Okay.
I used to get to go to wrestling for free. Like I remember seeing a house show that was like Flair and Hogan in a cage. Like I just remember that like as a real little kid. So I was always kind of into it. And I'm one of those people who, and like you said, like being on social media lets me know how many people are like this. Like I'm a grown ass kid. Like I never saw the reason to grow out of the things that I enjoy because adults made the things that I enjoy. So finding the inner workings of these things was always interesting to me. So yeah, I've been a wrestling fan ever since I can remember, 4 or 5 years old. Events whenever they came in town and just being with my dad watching them, just always loved pro wrestling.
Yeah, that was the same thing for me. Like I grew up in San Francisco and I moved to Sacramento when I was about anywhere between 4 to 6. I don't remember much. But I remember as a kid, like we would watch the old Saturday Night's Main Event. Oh, you'd watch like 3:05 Pacific on TBS would always be WCW Saturday night, and then you get the Saturday morning superstars.
Like 5, yeah.
3:05 for yeah, it was 3:05 in Northern California, and man, just like that kind of stuff got me hooked. And I remember like my dad wanted to sit me aside and was like, "Well, son, this isn't real. This isn't real entertainment." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean Sting's? What do you mean Sting's name isn't really Sting? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it says Sting when he comes out. His name has to be Sting. I go to school. My name's Ryan. It says Ryan on my books. Like, it has to be Sting." And then as I got, yeah, it has to be like, well, there's no way these guys wouldn't be on the up and up with me. And then as I got older, like I'm 33, I kind of learned about life. I think I'm part of the generation that learned about life through America Online. Like you started to learn to branch out. And I remember being like 13, 14, 15, being absolutely fascinated with the internet because I think that's when a lot of people our age either really fell in love with wrestling or they just started to distance themselves from it. I know there's another time for me, and I'll get into that momentarily. But, when I was 14, 15, I was starting to understand, like, why these guys were doing the things that they did. And a moment that always stands out to me was the Montreal Screwjob, because I remember very much, like, signing on to America Online, calling the Sacramento Bees, toll-free number to kind of get the results from it. But you learn that something happened that didn't normally happen. And then I wanted to learn everything that I could about that Montreal Screwjob because for me, I didn't understand how every match was laid out a certain way to make a larger point. I didn't understand the psychology of pro wrestling. I didn't understand what the bad guy that always loses was doing for the good guy. And then I found myself totally like enthralled with learning everything I could. Like I remember how excited I was to learn that D'Lo Brown's real name was like AC O'Connor or something. But you learn that from the America Onlines and the Netscape navigators of that time, and it's something I've stuck with ever since. And as I've gotten older, it's just become more interesting because you kind of try to find the story, and then with social media, like you said, like we link up with people that kind of have the same viewpoints, and it becomes something where it's like, well, what do we think this means, and what do we think that means, and everyone's an armchair booker to an extent, but I've learned to sort of just enjoy what each show is and what it means. It's a little bit more sanitized for my liking, but as I've gotten older, I've tried to understand the bigger picture to where it shouldn't be the Attitude Era. And we said this on a previous podcast. Like the Attitude Era was great, but I like the fact that was then and this is now. Like I think these guys today work harder. They have a harder responsibility to manage their on-screen personas with social media, and a lot of the stuff they do with kids and a lot of the stuff they do with the ESPN. So just that natural evolution with wrestling has been a lot of fun now.
Yeah, I appreciate, and it's like anything else. Like you appreciate the heightened athleticism. You respect the guys because they have to operate in a space where you can't be outlaws. You can't just do whatever. Like I don't know how often you do it, but when you try to go back and watch some of those like Attitude Era Raws, it's a tough watch. Sometimes.
They're not good. They're not good. There's no other way around here. They're not good.
Yeah, you had a lot of talent that people are fond of, but like what you're actually seeing as a product is not great. I think these guys, again, like I one of the I just made a poster for War Games Women's Title match, right? And I'm going to, and I don't like when I do that stuff. Like it's funny. My other half, she's always like, "Why do you do that?" And I tell her like, "I'm not looking for like a check, but I took it upon myself to start to learn Photoshop because what I've learned in my relationship with Travis is that he made his bones early on. What I mean by that is the East Coast cast came as Travis being a VIP member of the Torch and him reaching out to Wade Keller and saying, look, I think that you need a show that reaches out to people who subscribe to you but don't talk like you and don't know your experiences, people who have different experiences. And Wade gave him a shot. And here we are almost 8 years later, you know what I mean? So, Travis is, because he took that leap early on, he doesn't have to really prove himself at this point. Like, he did that from the jump. So, Travis gets certain looks that, are afforded him based on being bold early on. Like, I don't have those same looks. So, she was super gracious, named Chuck Taylor, who did a bunch of our artwork early on. And so a lot of the things you'll see if you go back and look at the artwork for a show early, or you look at some of our early merch, that's stuff that Chuck designed. But Chuck's an actual cartoonist, and does comics and does graphic design for sites. And he was doing that all for free for us. He was doing that off the strength of us having a good show. I don't really reach out to Chuck at this point because he's busy. Chuck has all that in a family going on. So I was like, look, I have to go out and I got to learn this. I got to make this stuff myself. And what I learned about, and if you look at a lot of what I do, I think some of it looks good, but a lot of it is just plug and play. I go with the template. Like, I'm the kid who I couldn't draw freehand, but if you put a picture next to me, I can draw exactly what's in that picture. Like, I'm a Xerox machine, basically. So I say all that to say this. When I was making the poster, when I put it up, I like to tag wrestlers in it, just so more people can take a look. I couldn't tag Nikki Cross. Set up to where you can't tag her in pictures. And so I say all that to say, like, they live in such a different space than people did 20 years ago. Everybody knows you. They know your real name. They know where your mother lives.
Yes.
Immediately after your match. And as a matter of fact, for Nikki Cross and people in NXT, it's probably harder because your match is going on at 7 o'clock Central, right? So at 8 o'clock, you can search your name on Twitter and people will tell you how good or how bad that match was.
Yeah.
Because it's taped. Like, you're seeing this live. And so, like, they have to deal with that. They got to deal with, like a Sasha Banks, who you hear all this stuff about Sasha Banks not being a super nice person.
She was nice to me.
There you go, right? There's one instance where a guy I know, Kurt Zamora, who has a cool show, and I follow him on Twitter as well, big Carolina Panthers fan. She was apparently really rude to his little sister. And my thing is, like, look, that's your little sister. If she's with your little sister, that's not cool. But at the same time, like, I know people who run over people in airports. You know what I mean? And, like,
very weird.
It's a job. You know what I mean? Like, I don't expect Sasha Banks to be nice to people 24/7. I expect Sasha Banks to show up and do her job and then go home. But there's a weird responsibility placed on these people, man. They have to do all that and put on marks and listen to how arenas aren't filled because they're not performing right. Like, it's a hard job. And plus, their competition is only aesthetic at this point. It's not box office. Like, nobody's making money like them. So their biggest competition is making sure John Q. Public with the Twitter account doesn't say they had a bad match.
Yeah.
But I don't say that like it's small. That's a big thing. People are tastemakers.
Go ahead. I think it's harder now to be a good pro wrestler because, you got to think. I've been of the firm belief that what those guys and girls do is the hardest sport-ish sort of job you can have. I think it's harder than pro football. I think it's harder than basketball in the sense to where they're doing this 300 days a year and they're going from city to city via car. They're trying to, like, if you look at someone like, let's say Cesaro, for example. I met him, really a nice guy, but, just the aesthetics of keeping Cesaro up year round, like, just from a health and wellness standpoint, like, that's got to be insane. Like, you drive from, say, Sacramento to Fresno, which is about a 4-hour drive, and then you still, from there to there, you still have to eat to maintain, a good appearance. You still have to work out to maintain a good appearance. You still have to understand that you're in a car 4 hours a day. Like, we just went to Disneyland in September, and after that 6-hour drive, I couldn't wait to get out of that car because, I was getting sort of cabin fever. Like, so to be able to do that, and then you have to find, healthy food that can keep you within, your macros or however you manage that, to be able to do those things 300 days a year. Like, I don't I want to say that they should be able to just go through airports and like just Kevin Owens had put that out on Twitter the other day to where he was trying to enjoy a day with his daughter and someone was like sneakily sending pictures or taking pictures of him, and I couldn't imagine like you spend 5 hours 5 days a week going up and down towns, away from your family, away from your kids, crammed in a rental car to go from 4 hour to 4 hour drive, still stay in shape. Then you still have to wrestle a match, and you're responsible for drawing that crowd. And you want a couple hours with your daughter, and you've got people with cameras jamming cameras in your face. Like, I couldn't imagine being like, okay, cool, it's 4 a.m. Let me sign these 5 autographs, but I still have to run to this airport gate to catch my gate. And then not only that, I think that was still prevalent back in the 80s, but now with the 2000s and with this era that we live in, now these guys can be caught on social media doing whatever. Like, it's sort of this gotcha culture moment that we're living into where, if Sasha Banks is rude to a fan, that fan's going to get on social media, and that's going to blow up by the time Sasha Banks, plane lands after a 2-hour flight. And I just think it's tough with that, and not only the corporate responsibility that these guys have to where we've seen this with other corporations. One bad fan experience can ruin their Susan Conman money or can ruin their ESPN contract. Like, there's a lot of pressure on these guys and girls. I think now it's so much harder to be a good pro wrestler because you have all those armchair bookers that are like, oh, this Cesaro storyline sucks, and I just want them to go back to the Attitude Era. Or even worse, like the hardest thing for me, and this has been blowing my mind for years. I want to get your thoughts on this, to where it seems like every generation before the current generation has an opinion about how things were back in the day. And one of the big examples I have with that is, say, a Jim Cornette, who's constantly shitting on the 2017 program. But my thing is, like, you're going on a podcast, which is a medium that wasn't available to you back in '85. You're on a medium in Twitter that wasn't available to you in 1985 to have that opinion, and you want these wrestlers to go back to a time to where they're drawing 100 people in a soundstage in Atlanta, to where they have they're not as healthy. They're drinking beers 24/7. They're away from their kids. They're mentally unstable. Like, what about that do you want to go back to? It's always been something that's been fascinating to me. Like, this stuff evolves naturally. Like, no, it can't be how it was back in the Attitude Era, because as a society, we don't want it to be how it was back in the Attitude Era. We want this to be something to where, Roman Reigns can be on ESPN, or the New Day can be on This Is the Six, or what, these guys have all these opportunities to make money outside of pro wrestling. And I wish that was something that was celebrated more. Yeah, as opposed to guys from the 90s or 80s getting on podcasts. And that's what I was giving you a hard time a couple weeks ago about, like, the whole Blue Apron promo code, to where, like, it really seems like every pro wrestler has a podcast where they get on there, and it's like, pro wrestling in 2017 sucks, but if you need a rental car with the TrueCar app, I can come help you. And it's like, like, just enjoy the fact that, like, these guys are drawing 70, 80,000 people for WrestleManias, to where WrestleMania 5 wasn't doing that. And just, I don't understand the concept of, like, making these guys out to be like it's their fault. Like, enjoy that. Why go back to how it was back in 1988, to where, you look at guys like Flair who had these kids and had these alcohol issues. Like, I just understand the value in going back to that era of pro wrestling to where you can't replicate that.
Yeah. Here's the hard thing with Jim Cornette. When I kind of got, Bruce Mitchell was like the guy I latched onto, because he talks like I want to talk. He analyzes like I want to analyze. And when he was nice enough to do my podcast, because he's a big comic book guy too, he was nice enough to do an episode of Preacher with us. And before we actually started recording, like, Travis had stepped away, and I just told him, I was like, look, like, I'm a kid who went to college for communications. I did student television in school. I did, radio internships in San Antonio. Like, you are who I pattern myself after as far as these things I do. So we kind of had that moment. So when Jim Cornette has bad things to say about Bruce Mitchell, like, I take that personally. And I shouldn't, because it's not about me, but, I internalize that. And then, like, Wade Keller and I don't have the same relationship that me and Bruce Mitchell have, but we definitely communicate because I'm part of his platform. And so I do reach out to him when I need to do certain things. Like when I'm making merchandise, like I have to like talk away, like, are you cool with me putting such and such symbol on there? You know what I mean? When I'm building promos for Rich Fan for the deep dive, like I have to run those through Wade. So, we have a business relationship. So Cornette has certain things to say about not necessarily my employers, but the people who give me a platform. Like it's difficult for me sometimes. But, as far as the things he says, like, he has a very strong opinion. And he was successful in his time. And it's not that the things that he says can't work, but whenever Jim Cornette has a strong opinion, I think about two things. I think about Kevin Owens, I think about the Young Bucks. Okay? And I don't know if you ever heard me, like, I'm not a Young Bucks fan. Like, I think it's wild, cartoonish, but at the same time, when I see you being successful, like, I have to respect it. You know what I mean? Like, they've carved out a path to where they never have to reach out to the WWE, and they'll always get a check. Look, so basically, as long as these kids don't overeat, they're paid for life, right? And then Kevin Owens, who Jim Cornette basically put out there as a guy who would never make it, mainly due to physique. For my money, and it's weird to say pound for pound for a guy who's over 230, but for my money, pound for pound, the best performer in WWE in the last 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, he commands a different level of respect, and he can produce a different level of vitriol and put together a different level of match. Like, those three things together, I don't know who else has that ability. You know what I mean? So, like, when an old head reaches out and says, this is why X, Y, and Z doesn't work, I'm like, yo, look at this man's check. Like, look at how people respond to him. Look at how all these talking heads look at his progression and his performance. Like, you have to respect that. The Attitude Era was a lot of, have you seen, everybody's seen Zach and Mary make a porno, right?
Long time ago, but yes.
Am I allowed to cuss on your show?
Yeah, go ahead. Fire away.
Pretty sure. So like
I do that shit all the time.
There we go. So the thing I took from that was, when they filmed one of the scenes, Zach asked the camera guy what it looked like. He was like, it looked like a bunch of shit going into other shit. And a lot of the Attitude Era was shit going into other shit. Yeah. But it was shit going into other shit with Stone Cold doing his thing, with Rock doing his thing, with Gothic Taker doing his thing, with heel Triple H doing his thing. Mm-hmm. It was so strong at the top that you could really do a lot. And, if you're on if you have a 2-hour show that's 88 minutes and 66 minutes of bullshit and have a strong 22 minutes and people would rave about it and buy your t-shirts. You know what I mean? Like, it's a harder job, like you say, these guys have to do. And my biggest complaint about wrestling now, I just want the narrative to be consistent. You know what I mean? I'm not so much worried about the inner workings of a specific match. It's just I want to flow with what I'm watching a month later, what I'm watching now. Like, and that's nothing to do with the people in ring. That's who's running it. And I don't. The reason that people are still looking at shots, and this is the thing, like, I would never want to work for WWE because I got a slick mouth, man. Yeah. And I couldn't deal with somebody talking to me cross. Like, I don't care if you're twice my size. Like, you're not going to disrespect me, and it's going to be beef immediately. You know what I mean? Like, so that's not my lane. But people who criticize, and like I said, and not even singling out Jim Cornette, but the people who were in the business for a long time have a whole lot to say about what ex-wrestler does, and they don't got a lot to say with Vince McMahon's writing. Like, you don't see a lot of tweets from people with these check marks talking about, I wish Vince would write X, Y, and Z better. I wish he'd treat X performer better. Why doesn't he help, ABC performer out? You don't see that. You see people criticizing the talent. And I know you want to talk about it, but it's just like the thing we got with the NFL. People are criticizing the players. People don't have a whole lot to say about management and ownership. That never seems to be a problem. But we want to talk about how the players are performing, how the players have bad attitudes. It's like my man Julius said, remember the Titans, like attitude reflects leadership. If your problem is with these people on, the base level of what's going on, like we got to reach out and criticize the people on top. I feel like that needs to be a part of the process.
That was one thing about the Young Bucks that, like, I'm kind of torn on them. Like, I applaud them on one hand of being able to do something that a lot of wrestlers can't do. And I think this is where WWE sort of has the rule of the states to where, if you're not in WWE, and generally the whole thought process, if you're not in WWE and you're wrestling in America, then the idea is to get to WWE. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't, with guys like Austin Aries, who just tweeted out that he's making more on the independents than he was in the big leagues. And by all means, good for you, Austin Aries, because I've seen your fiance, and if you're making more money and you're home more often, more power to you, my man. But yeah, do your thing. And I'm not knocking it. Just the thing that I didn't like that the Young Bucks did a couple weeks ago, and I know this is something I did want to talk about, with the thing that happened with Jimmy Jacobs, to where, like, if you are going to carve out this lane to where you are anti-WWE, you've done something that not a lot of independent wrestlers have done, in a sense of your T-shirts are in Hot Topic to where anyone can get them. Like, the Bullet Club T-shirt is one of the most popular wrestling T-shirts I'll see. Bullet Club, or the Kenny Omega shirts, or the Young Bucks, like, they've been able to really latch on to this whole internet, social media age, to where a lot of people are heavily into, what's alternative, such as the Bullet Club or New Japan or what have you. So they've done an excellent job carving that lane. I just didn't understand, like, if you are going to be so anti-WWE, why are you showing up at a WWE event trying to say that you're going to invade that event? Like, to me, it makes more sense to be like, look, we don't need to do this and still be WWE. And the hard part for me was, I don't know if you saw this, to where, WWE producer Jimmy Jacobs came out and took a photo with them.
Yep.
That got on the internet, and that got Jimmy fired. To me, and I've never met you in person, but if I'm going to your job and I know that I'm going to get in trouble at your job, here are a couple of things that we're not going to do. We're not going to take a picture together. We're not going to, and if we do take a picture together, we're not going to put that on social media. And I'm going to go to you and be like, look, this can potentially cost me my job. Or if you come to me and say, look, I know we took this photo. If you put it on Instagram, there's a possibility that I can lose my job. Just don't put it on social media. And that was the hard thing for me, where, like, yes, the Young Bucks have done an excellent job carving out that lane to where they are extremely set. They don't need to ever work for Vince, which is great, because a lot of independent wrestlers, their goal is eventually to work to Vince to get the money. But if the Bucks and Cody and those guys have got their following in Japan, they've got their following with that shit-eating ProWrestlingTees.com, they've got their following there. That's awesome. You don't need to come to a WWE event, cost your friend his job, just to show that you're anti-WWE, because all you ended up doing was you lost your Too Sweet trademark, and your good friend lost his job. Like, I don't understand the value in doing that, in a sense to where, like, you've got what you had before you even got into Monday Night Raw. Like, why the need to go there and make a scene to where everyone loses?
Yeah, I don't, and I mean, I feel like there was so much bravado built up. Like, you show up in a No Limit limo instead of a No Limit tank. I feel like there was so much bravado built up that they were doing something. I mean, it was edgy what they were doing, but I think that here's one thing. We talk about the Attitude Era as something that, even though it was great, it had its flaws. I do think that at times people forget that WWE now is, one, a corporate entity, but two, the survivor of all that. And yes. So they're not going to go through the same mistakes that they've been through. They're not going to allow you to Bigfoot them like they Bigfooted somebody. Like, once you win the war, you're not going to make the same mistakes. Like, they're going to handle it different. So I feel for the guy, but I also think they had some nostalgia in their heart that kind of tripped him up because now that man isn't eating like he was. So, hopefully he lands on his feet, but that's rough. That's a rough spot to be in.
Especially because, like, that, if that's your friend, like, look, man, like, don't put this on Instagram. Let's all come out and have a laugh about it. But, like, just because you wanted to get some extra likes and some extra clicks, like, your friend lost his job. Like, is it worth it really in the end to have a couple different pro wrestling tee sales? Like, your buddy's out of work. Like, you don't know if he's going to get put on the same way that you did at PWT or New Japan or whatever. Because once you're scoring by WWE, like, if you're a writer, where else can you really go? Like, there's nowhere else to really go and write television other than TNA, which, for the life of me, I don't know where that's on. But I wanted to get into one more thing about. We talked earlier about War Games. Are you excited for them bringing War Games back to NXT? I know that's coming back to the Houston show, but what are your thoughts on them bringing War Games back?
So, like, visually, it's one of my favorite, like, gimmicks. Yeah. But I've also gone back and actually watched the War Games matches. And, like, yeah, I've seen them, and they're not the greatest, like, because of the format and because of how they have to follow the action. Like, the one I always cling to is, well, there's two of them. I always cling to the, of course, the initial WCW versus NWO one when Sting came out. They didn't want no part of him.
Oh yeah,
the rematch one with Bret Hart leading the team, DDP.
Oh yeah, that one sucked.
Visually, they're hard to film because you're following so much different action and people coming out at weird times.
Yeah.
I'm excited for NXT because they handle these things well, it seems. They haven't had a bad visual match just yet, so I'm sure they'll handle it right. I'm not super excited about the competitors in the match, but I think that's why you go with the match. Yeah, I mean, I think it's because NXT hasn't produced a subpar special yet. I think this is going to be good. I'm curious to how Adam Cole is going to come out. He's not a guy I watched, before I seen him really in WWE. I just realized he's slight of frame, but people seem to be really high on him, so I'm interested to see how he performs.
Yeah, see, I was like, and I've always jokingly kind of messed with you about, as you're putting out these Starcade photoshops, which I've said before, I think are really cool and really well done. Like, I love the concept of what it is that you do. And like, usually when I'll fall asleep when I'm at home, I'll go back and watch some of these old, like, 1990s WCW pay-per-views, and they're not easy on the eyes. That's the easiest way I could think to put it. Like, a lot of these, like, 1991 Halloween Havocs or these fall brawls, like the one that you just made the visual of, the one with Hawk and Dustin Rhodes and all that, like, they're really tough to do because I don't know if it's just bringing nostalgia back for nostalgia's sake, which obviously there's a lane in that, but I don't know if it's like trying to bring back a VCR rewinder in 2017 and people are going to see it and they're like, well, it was kind of cool at the time, but everything sort of evolved. Like, those pay-per-views back then, you might have had one or two good matches, but from an aesthetic standpoint, like, they're not very fun to sit through. And I'll usually sit through, like, the first match or two, and then I'll fast forward to the main event. But, like, a lot of that stuff from when they were doing War Games, even when they did the one where Kurt Hennig turned in Greensboro, like, even that one in itself, like, they're very, like you said, they're very tough to film. They're very tough for the crowd to get behind. So I'm interested to see, like, I'm not down on it yet. Obviously, I'm going to watch it, but I don't know if it's going to be something to where you're bringing the VCR rewinder back in 2017, and fans are like, nah, we've kind of seen this before, meh. Or if the nostalgia of it's going to, you're going to take the nostalgic standpoint, and you're going to get these guys in 2017 to really make it a good match. And I've got a lot of faith in Triple H and NXT to make that good. I just, like, like, a lot of those early 90s WCW pay-per-views are very, very difficult to watch unless you get a really rare good match between, like, Sting and Vader or Cactus Jack and Vader. A lot of that stuff is really it's slow to watch. Like, a lot of slow developing stuff. I just don't know how that's going to be absorbed in 2017.
Yeah, I think the production value is at a point to where they're going to shoot this well. Now, weird for me to say because if you listen to anything I did like a year and a half ago, I would just sound so blasphemous. But I'm like, Triple H knows how to shoot this. Like, I know it's going to look, of course, better than it did in, 96, 97, but I just really believe, and this is another thing, I think that they're probably going to go with who's in Hell in a Cell. You're going to have, the gap where the camera can fit in. Like, I really believe that they're going to produce this, better than way back then. But yeah, I believe in their ability to make this happen. So, we'll see. And I also think the card around that is going to be so strong. Like, I like Galloway's matches. All four of the women in the match, including, and not to give away too many spoilers, but all four of the women in the match are really talented. So that's going to be good. Matter of fact, as I say Galloway's match, I don't know if it's been on TV yet, but his challenger is really, really good in the ring. I think the card's going to be strong enough to where if for any reason that match is just okay, we're going to remember it fondly because everything else in the card is going to be good.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna watch it. I'm interested to see how it comes across in 2017. I don't know if they're starting to run out of original ideas and they're just gonna start pulling back from old WCW. I mean, I would love to see them go back to Halloween Havoc if they're gonna do that too. Like those are always fun to watch. Just like the intro packages and the way that those videos were shot. I think that's kind of what I always liked about those photo edits that you do. Is I like the old '90s nostalgic video edits with sort of a twist of 2017 pro wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, they just know what they're doing. Talked about here early on, we're not super fond of what was actually happening from start to finish during those, Attitude Era shows. And even with WCW, like you had a lot of like Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero and Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit and Juventud Guerrera and Billy Kidman and toss him whatever other name you want, and Rick Steiner and Booker T were putting on these high quality matches around a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Workhorses. And then, we cling to a lot of stuff that isn't very visually, but again, they know we have that nostalgia, so they know if they produce things that still echo that, it's going to draw our eyes. Like, my big thing is, I don't really like when I go and make these posters and these promos, I immediately go to about 1993. Look at what was made then. Because I'm not like me recreating something that was made in 2007. Like that was a time where we're still not at nostalgia, but it wasn't super cool to me, like how it looked. So again, my eye is tied to that 90s, that mid 90s aesthetic, and they know a lot of people operate like that. Like that's what they want to see. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of it as well.
So, what do you have a favorite wrestler of all time? I always like to ask people I talk to this because it's a different answer every time. So it's a two-part question. Do you have a favorite wrestler of all time, and do you have a favorite wrestling moment of all time that you may have seen live or had the pleasure of experiencing? What are some of your favorites?
So when I was young, I kind of had, and even though it's funny, I'm not a big Triple H guy as a wrestler, but there were three H's. It was Bret Hart, it was Scott Hall, and it was Kurt Hennig. I thought Bret Hart was the first guy who really made me look at wrestling as a sport, like with his technical ability, with his strikes and the impact of his moves and how he carried himself. I'm a bigger fan of Bret Hart than Shawn Michaels, but I acknowledge how great Shawn Michaels is. Like I acknowledge he might actually be better in the ring, but he's not what I like.
I always use the analogy that I tell people: Randy Moss is my favorite wide receiver of all time, and Jerry Rice is the best.
Exactly. And yeah, like I think Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. We'll argue, and it's funny, somebody tried to argue this with me on Facebook, and I was like, no, you're not arguing with me. We're saying different things. If you tell me Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, I'm fine with that. Like, I won't argue your point because how you measure greatness is typically by success, and I get that. But nobody, to me, throws as accurate, throws as far, sees the field better, or runs as better. Nobody, to me, has those four qualities like Aaron Rodgers does. So I think he's the best. No, yeah, I think Bret Hart, it was the guy for me. Scott Hall was just the first wrestler I acknowledged as larger than life. You know what I mean? You stand in 6'7", 6'8". You know, back when he was on the gas, he's standing there like 280. Like he's a monster. And
back on the Ica Pro.
Exactly. He's the first wrestler I thought was cool. You know what I mean? Like like I said, I'm born in '85, so I saw Scott Hall before I saw Scarface. You know, like he's my
I did too.
That character, exactly. So like this guy's cool, and then when he shows up on Nitro, like he's just the coolest thing in the whole world to me. And you know, it's interesting because we've all been, you know, in college and we've all been early 20s. You know, part of the reason, and I went through some things as a young man, and you know, with alcohol. You know what I mean? And
me too.
Watching some things with him as far as how, you know, it affected his life, that did make me alter some of the things that I did, because you see somebody who just, you know, should have had all the success ever, and him for whatever reason, and it makes you rethink some of the things you do. And then, you know, Kurt Hennig in a lot of ways is similar to me as Bret Hart. Like he's an athlete, you know? And that perfect plex is just the coolest thing in the whole world to me. I'm like, not even like the trick shots, or, you know, one thing that I actually do, and this is really corny. A lot of times when I'm leaving the job, I'm on my way to the gym, and because, you know, you talk to people at the gym, it's a lot of close talking and fist bumping, you don't want to have bad breath.
You do the gum spit?
I do the gum spit and I slap it in the parking lot.
Do you ever feel bad if you miss?
No, I don't miss. I never miss.
I missed once, and I felt horrible.
Yeah, right?
Like I wanted to, I didn't do it. I wanted to pick my gum up and just hit it out of my hands. I was like, how did I miss?
Those three guys said, even though it doesn't begin with H, Kurt Angle is my favorite all time. I guess because he embodies all those things I said. Like, to me, like, being cool it's not just being the fawns, you know what I mean? It's being comfortable in your skin.
Yeah.
Embraced, like, the uber nerd character, but he's still the best athlete. It was just amazing to me. Because as a kid growing up in Texas, like, you play football in Texas. You just do. Okay? But I also went to the magnet high school at my main high school. So even though I'm at a school with 1,000 kids, my magnet school is 400, 500 kids. So I kind of existed in both worlds at the time. And to me, like, it never made sense with me, like, cliques. Like, even though I play ball, like, I'm in a class all day with these kids who can program computers. Like, why is that not cool? Like, that's what you're good at. That's what you embrace. That's what you live. So to me, like, that's cool. So Kurt Angle was just that. Like, when the bell hits, Kurt Angle was the best in the ring. And then you go backstage, and Kurt Angle will play the ukulele, and Kurt Angle will put on a little cowboy hat. Kurt Angle will drink the milk, and he'll do skits with everybody. He was just, like, when you say sports entertainer, as wrestling evolves, to me, he was the perfect one. He played his character great, and in the ring, like, he had some of the greatest matches you've ever seen. And favorite moment is probably the match with him and Shane. I'm not a proponent of Shane McMahon as a wrestler. I think, and this is the way you're countering me. I think that a guy who gets to play wrestling fantasy camp every 6 months and gets to do everybody else's moves and then gets, you know, a 3-month vacation, doesn't have to go back on the road the next day. I don't think that guy deserves a whole lot of credit for what he does, even though he's been in some great matches. And I say all that, like, but, you know, taking an ass kicking is still taking an ass kicking. So him and Kurt Angle kicking a ring, man, just the stuff they did, I think that's probably it. Like, I could always say the night Scott Hall showed up in WCW, but that's trite. Like a lot of people kind of house that, but yeah, I mean it's probably that, or it's the night after No Way Out makes his first appearance on Raw.
Oh yeah.
He said Toronto, that's where we live. That's just my favorite thing. Like Rock was just like Kurt Angle or Rock. As I give you 5 names after you ask for one, Kurt Angle or Rock is my favorite. Like received. I'm a person who I don't get really high on gifts. Like I appreciate them, but I'm more like you would do better for me buying me a drink than buying me a gift.
Yes.
Favorite gift ever. My girl got us tickets to WrestleMania in Miami when The Rock came back, and it was it was amazing. Like I got to experience like his return. It's just a perfect moment, and he's just he embodies the thing that I think we should all strive to be, which is even though he's blessed with great genetics and to have great connections, but he's a guy who barely had dollar to his name and fought his way to the top of the industry, and then flip that into maybe the most recognizable name on the planet, like through hard work. And he's just so admirable to me. Like he's the one celebrity I probably like have to run up on and talk to out of everybody in this whole world, because he's that great. But yeah, that probably my favorite wrestling moment, if I can include it being personal as far as travel, was WrestleMania in Miami. It was just an amazing experience.
One of the guys I do this show with, Ricky Congo, he was actually at that WrestleMania show. Yeah, one of the guys I do the show with, Ricky Congo, he was actually at that WrestleMania.
What did he say about the show? Did you love it?
He loved it. He had kind of gotten away from wrestling for a little while, and he said that was the show that got him back in.
Yeah, it was great. Like, and it was everybody's worried about it raining, but they had a great set. The card was great. Like you had your that was it's crazy. Like I get to say that I was in the Yes Club.
Yes,
because the thing happens with Sheamus, the night before, Sheamus and Daniel Bryan, and people are booing, and like we leave the show and people are upset about it. We went to Raw the next night. So I got to be there for the birth of Yes. It was weird, it was organic, and it happened to Rock first because he was the one that came out. And it was just an amazing show. And I remember Daniel Bryan being like, yo, if you don't cheer for me like this if you're not gonna buy my merch. And then, from then on races, it was great, man.
So I'm gonna get you out of here on one thing. I know we talked about this on Twitter the other day. I want to explain the curse for you.
Okay. Yes.
I talked about the curse of me taking a tour on the stadium. Yes. So a couple years ago, my girlfriend, who is next to me right now asleep. Hi, Bear. There you go. Her and I went to Philadelphia, and we went to an Eagles-Dolphins game. And I specifically chose that game for 2 reasons. One, the Dolphins were horrible. And 2, I thought, NFC East football is the same thing as like Green Bay Packers football, where you got to go when it's cold.
Yeah.
Like I would never want to go to Lambeau in September. Like going to Lambeau in September it just doesn't feel right. Like I want to go to Lambeau in like December and January. So we went to Lambeau, we did our thing. We went to Philly, we did our thing, and we're sitting in the stands, and they lost by a point to Miami. And I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, we traveled across the country, and the next day, I think, we took a tour of the stadium. And they told us specifically, whatever you do, don't step on the field. And you could have told me, please step on the field, and I would have stepped on the field. So they said, don't step on the field. And we kind of hung back because, I was trying to make the most of everything. Like, you get to see the stadium, get to go through all the inner workings, the locker room. It's like the coolest thing in the world to me. So I took a tour of the stadium, and I put 1 foot on the grass. And I was like, okay, like, no alarm went off. Let me put on 2 feet on the grass. So I put 2 feet on the grass. Like, I have a couple pictures of us on the grass at the lake.
Oh, no.
And then I was like, well, you know, like any respectful fan, let me take a piece of this grass home with me because, you know, I'm an adult and that's what adults do. So I grabbed a couple pieces from the grass. I put it in our piece of paper that had the hotel room key. And we went to like the Sixers game that next day. And, you know, I've had the grass the whole time ever since. But ever since I did that, the Eagles have been terrible. The Eagles were awful. Like, Chip Kelly got fired like a couple weeks later. They kind of went, you know, they had their issues for a little while, but now they're better. So in April, I went to Dallas because my dad was coaching in the Australian rules world. You know, the Australian rules is like the Australian rules tournament for America, and he played. I played for a little bit, and he was going to be busy doing his thing, so I had to find stuff to do. So I was like, all right, cool. Let me take a tour of AT&T Stadium. It's a huge stadium. And they said, you know, you guys can actually go on the grass. Well, I went on the grass. I scored a touchdown. No one was guarding me. It was a blown coverage.
Nice.
And I took the TO photo on the star, and I took grass off of the field at AT&T Stadium. Well, now that I've done that, the Cowboys are in shambles. It's all because of me.
Yo, I legit stole a football at WrestleMania.
You're not wrong for that.
Yeah, I didn't want to wrap it up just really quick. We, me, Travis, Shaheed, and Steve, and Dre all went to WrestleMania in Dallas. We tailgated for a couple of hours for the game, so I'm blitzed when we walk in. I ended up wandering away from our seats and wandering into a suite that had been set up for some people, and there was a football in the suite, in its packaging, and I stole it.
You should.
The football's in my apartment somewhere right now, and I'm pretty sure that Jerry Jones is making his players stand for the anthem because I stole that football over a year ago.
You know what? If you and I have joined forces to help ruin that team, I'm for it.
Okay, all right. I will maintain that football then.
Yeah, I don't know where that grass is, but I know I scored a touchdown in that stadium. It was a blown coverage. No one was guarding me. Scored a touchdown. Ever since then, the team's been bad. You're welcome, Eagles. You're welcome, Eagles fans of the world.
Very well done, sir. Very well done.
So I'm gonna wrap this up, man. Where can people follow you on Twitter? Where can they get Where can they get your shows, man? Give them all the information they need.
Okay, so yeah, I'm on Twitter. You can follow me at Ceehawk. It's CEEHAWK. It's the same thing on Instagram. You want to see me live my crazy life on Snapchat? It's Ceehawk with an E at the end, so CEEHAWKE. Yeah, if you want to find the podcast, a few different areas, you go to SoundCloud.com and South Congress with a K. It's also South Congress with a K on iTunes. That's about it. We have a YouTube page as well. You just search Ceehawk on YouTube and you can find the page there. So we do a little bit of everything. You'll see, actually, if you look at that, you'll see a little bit of my acting stuff, which I've done here pretty recently. So just, into a little bit of everything, and everything South Congress with a K. You search that on Google and you'll find us pretty much across everything. Same thing with Ceehawk. So, yeah.
Cool, man. You can check this show out at iTunes by searching Gully Blanchard. Send us a review. Let us know how great we are. If you don't like the show, we don't like you. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. All 63, including this episode, will be available at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. Man, Cam, thanks very much for making the time, man. It was a lot of fun. We got to do this again soon, and I'm sure we'll be getting back on Twitter and having fun with it later on.
Definitely, man. I appreciate you having me.
Not a problem, man. Until then, we'll be back next week, and you guys have a good rest of the week.